Hello, this is Hannah Sanrell, VP of Marketing and Education at Coach Training EDU. As part of our ongoing efforts to investigate how the latest research integrates into coaching frameworks, we recently had the special opportunity to sit down with Kendall Cotton Bronk, PhD. Dr. Bronk is the Principal Investigator for the Adolescent Morale Development Lab and Professor of Psychology in the Division of Behavioral and Social Sciences at Claremont Graduate University. She is a developmental scientist, most commonly investigating young people's purposes in life. This interview helps us better understand how young people and all of us can develop more purpose and meaning through our lives and lessons from the most current research on the topic. And with that, let's take a listen.
I'm quite curious. What is the current work that you have with purpose and youth?
So I'm the principal investigator of the Adolescent Moral Development Lab, which is located at Claremont Graduate University. We do a lot of research in that lab focused on purpose, young people's purposes in life, and also on positive youth development more generally. We currently have 3 projects underway. The first one is really focused on positive youth development more generally. We were engaged in an evaluation working with an NGO in Liberia, which is in Western Africa, and working with young children, most of whom were street children, and trying to understand the extent to which this program was able to cultivate positive youth development. But we quickly realized that we don't really know what positive youth development looks like in the Liberian context or in that culture. So my colleagues and I, working really closely with Liberian researchers, we got another grant to go back and to really try to understand what does positive youth development look like in Liberia. We have a lot of great models of what that entails in the US and in the Western context, but no idea really what it entails in Liberia. So that's the first project. The second one is another international project where we're doing a cross-cultural study between East and West. So here in the US, we're conducting interviews with high school students. We're following them for 3 years, so through their sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school. And what we're hoping to learn is a little bit about their career development. How are they thinking about what it is that they want to do in their lives? And we're curious to see how and where and to what extent, if at all, purpose enters that equation. So as they're thinking about what it is what kind of career they want to have, do they think about purpose? And if they do, how do they come to that? Do they have coaches that bring up this, thoughts about purpose? Do they have parents that talk about the things that might give their lives purpose? Are there resources? Are there other relationships? And so we're following over the course of 3 years. High school is a common time for young people to start to reflect on the things that matter most to them and the things that give their lives purpose. And then I said it's a cross-cultural study. So we have colleagues in Taiwan administering the same interviews. So we have 100 interviews so far with young people, and we're just starting our second round this year. But interesting to see in the US, we don't talk a lot about career development, at least not too much, at least not for young people who plan to go to college. For young people who are not college bound, we do tend to talk more about it. But beyond, for college-bound young people, the conversation often sort of stops at college. So in Taiwan, I understand those conversations there's much more plentiful and much more intentional. So there might even be opportunities for us to learn in the West about, ways that you can insert discussions around purpose into the career planning process. So that's the second project. And then the third project that we are working on involves young adults, so between like 18 and 25. And this project is focused on the search for purpose. So we know that before people generally settle on a purpose for their life, they tend to engage in some sort of process of searching. And we also know that that process can be kind of uncomfortable. It doesn't really feel good to feel like everybody around you knows what it is they're trying to accomplish and you've yet to figure it out. That can be a really uncomfortable experience, as you might imagine, right? Maybe we've all experienced it. So what we want to try to do is understand, what does that search process look like and how do young people manage to do it well? How do they manage to have patience? And what that means from an academic perspective, it's kind of like perseverance, but you're moving towards this goal in a self-regulated way. And some religious traditions that speak quite a bit about patience. In particular, patience is relevant to young people who identify as Christian, Buddhist, and Muslim. So we're interviewing young people from those religious backgrounds, as well as young people who are not, who don't identify as religious, to try to understand what their search for purpose looks like and how they think about the role of patience in that process. So those are the 3 projects we currently have underway.
That is so cool. I think one of the things I found fascinating was how you broke it down into 3 different aspects of purpose, which is like life coaching gold. You know, I mean, just anything you can break down is this is good stuff. What was the thought process, in breaking it down between, goal directedness, personal meaning, and then beyond the self, or I would imagine like empathetic or larger.
Yeah. So when you want to conduct scientific research on a big construct like purpose, the first thing you have to do is have a definition. So my colleagues and I, we really put in a lot of time trying to figure out how can we define purpose. I think in our daily lives, we use the terms purpose and meaning interchangeably. When you're trying to conduct scientific research, you can't do that. You can't have 2 terms that refer to the same idea. You need one idea and one definition. And you need a definition that you can operationalize in a study, right? How can you see evidence of this? So it was a tricky challenge. And what we really did was we reviewed a lot of the early research. People like Viktor Frankl and Carol Riff were really early in thinking about the role of purpose in well-being. So we definitely paid attention to their research and the way they had defined the terms. We also looked at the way that researchers had defined meaning. What we were seeing was that these 3 components were really most important. A purpose in life, it's an intention. But it's we have lots of intentions. It's a goal-oriented intention. It's something you want to work toward. The interesting thing is it may not be something that's ever fully achievable. You may find purpose in being the best parent you can be, as I do. And that's never something I'm ever going to fully achieve, right? I can always be working toward it, but it's not like there's an end point. So it may not always be an achievable kind of goal, but it's definitely one towards which you can make progress. The second component is that not only is it a goal, we have lots of goals, but it's a goal that's particularly meaningful. It's something that really matters to you. In fact, it matters so much that you're willing to dedicate your time, your energy, and your personal resources in actively working toward it. It's not just something you're thinking about, not just something you talk about, but something you're actually acting on and working on making progress toward. And then the third component is that it's also motivated, at least in part, by a desire to contribute to the world beyond the self. So there might be self-serving goals. I want to be rich. I want to be famous. We wouldn't say that's a source of purpose because it's all self-oriented. It's all about you instead of how you fit into the broader world or what you can contribute to the broader world. And I think it's important to note that everything that we do, we have mixed motivations. So you might also do it because you enjoy it and because you're good at it and maybe because you can make money or whatever. But at least one core component, one core driver, I should say, is the desire to contribute to the broader world.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is so key to this whole discussion of empathetic motivation, the ability to do something for the sake of other. There's a whole different power in that. Yeah. Hearing you speak, it's clear you're doing your life's work. Like you're, that feeling of like, oh my goodness, what was the path to professorship for you?
Yeah. So I actually started out working in business, graduated from undergrad and went to Northwestern, go Wildcats, and was working in Chicago. And I really enjoyed it. I grew up with my dad owned his own business. My mom was a teacher. So I really had no exposure to big business. And I was just curious how it all worked. So I actually really enjoyed it. I did some management consulting. But I realized I was doing a lot of work. This was way back in the day when the internet was just getting out there. I was working in the tech space. And so there were a lot of maybe questionable activities going on. And I realized I was really curious about like, how do people make the decisions or make up their mind about what's right and what's wrong in this space that is kind of poorly defined at this point. And when I talked to my colleagues about that, I realized they're not interested in these questions. And so I started doing some reading on moral decision making, and I came across William Damon, who's a professor at Stanford, one of the leading minds on the topic of moral development. And I reached out to him, and I just purely luck that he had a spot for me. And he had this project come up around purpose. And at that time, I just gotten married. My husband got really sick. He had to have a heart transplant totally out of the blue. And it caused me to really step back and think about, wait a minute, what is my purpose in life? And what am I trying to do as I launch this whole, academic pursuit into moral development? And so being able to work on this project around purpose was really meaningful to me. And there was definitely an element of I search in that research. And to be perfectly honest, I would have thought that by now I probably would have moved on to another topic. But the truth is, I find the work so rewarding, and there's so much yet to know that we've yet to uncover around the study of purpose. And so I just keep studying it, and I know we haven't exhausted the questions, and I still find it every bit as inspiring as I did the day I started.
Yeah, no kidding. And which is why I reached out. I read your work as I have to talk to this person. Seriously, I'm not, no kidding. And because part of it is like from a coaching standpoint and just life standpoint, I feel like I was born to do this work. And you know that feeling like you're in a space. And hard events are pretty intense. How did this research or what did you take away personally from this research to help you move through that experience?
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of thinking when we find ourselves in difficult moments, those tend to be times we really turn inward. And, there's an element of that we need to do, some self-care and things like that. But I also think that we want to fight the urge to become too inwardly focused, and that we also want to turn outward. There are a lot of positive emotions and positive experiences associated with contributing to the broader world, with engaging in service, with taking care of others. So I don't want to downplay, if you're dealing with serious depression and anxiety, you have to deal with those issues. But I would say also, and we can also look outwardly and see how can I avoid the temptation to become so wrapped up in here that I'm not turning toward the outside world. And like I said, the act of engaging, it reminds you that you're essential and the world needs you. You have a gift. You have something that the world needs. And so you really have there's a sense of responsibility, I think, to find your way to give back. And I think when you're reminded of that, it can help. Again, I don't want to overstate it, but alleviate some of the negative states that you might be encountering.
Yeah, I find that it feels like it's a floor, that helps the doom and gloom not stay so doom and gloomy. Right. Like, I can't, I gotta go do this thing. I gotta get
right. There's a reason I need to get up. I need to get going. Somebody else needs me or some cause needs me. And it's whatever matters to you. Yeah. Yeah. And I do think it's important not to downplay. We have a lot of young people dealing with real mental health challenges. And so I don't want to downplay that and to say, just ignore it and go out and do stuff for others. But I think it's an and. We need to take care of ourselves, and we need to look outward and think about how we can use the skills and the strengths that we have to contribute.
So I imagine with the work that you're doing in West Africa, I imagine there's all sorts of cultural learning involved in that. What's been some of the biggest learnings or the things that you feel are important for other people to know?
Yeah. Well, a lot of my research actually involves people from other cultures. And so there are a couple things that are really, really important. I think the first thing that you have to think about is how basically you don't know what you don't know about another culture. And so one of the practices that we follow in our lab is to always invite cultural insiders to be a part of our project. That's actually in all three projects. We have Liberian research assistants who are working with us on the project in Liberia. We have Taiwanese collaborators. And, I mentioned that we are interviewing young people for the Search for Purpose project from Christian, Buddhist, and Muslim backgrounds. And we have cultural advisors from all of those religious backgrounds who help us conduct the research. So I think that's one thing that's really important. You want to make sure that you're not asking questions that could make somebody feel uncomfortable or that could perpetuate racist, stereotypes or that would include your bias. So I think that's just part of doing good research. And then a second thing is that you want to avoid you're swooping in to solve some problem. That's not at all the way that I approach my research. I really take it from more of what we call an appreciative inquiry approach, which is that we want to work with people from another culture to understand what are the changes they want and what skills do I have that might be able to help facilitate that. And so instead of coming in and doing research, on people from another cultural context, we want to do it with them. And one of the key components of appreciative inquiry is what we call self-guided change. So if the individuals of the culture aren't interested in this, then you shouldn't be looking at it. That's not something they want to do when you don't really have the right to just kind of swoop in and take your data and run. So you want to think about what are the things that the changes they want to see. And that's, like I said, when we were working with this organization, the organization realized we don't really know what positive youth development entails. I mean, we hadn't really thought about it. And, half our team is Liberian and we're working with them. They helped us, create the interview protocol, think about the participants to include in the study, conduct the interviews. As we get to that process, they'll be involved in analysis and writing up, presenting. So it's really a true collaboration. And yeah, those things are really important.
That's so cool. Very coach-like of you.
Really? Oh,
very, yeah, and very delivering empowerment as opposed to delivering knowledge, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the other part of the appreciative inquiry is that we really build on strengths. Mm-hmm. So thinking about not just what's going wrong here, Liberia has some real challenges. Not to they've had civil wars, they've had Ebola, they've had hardships. But they also have a lot of strengths. And so it's not just focusing on what's going wrong, but on what's going right. What are the relationships that work here for young people? What are the resources that are available to young people? And how can we build on those strengths?
Yeah, I imagine it gets pretty intense. I imagine there's some, intense feelings around the research as well when it gets to these different points. So last advice to young people. What are the top thing from based on your research, everything? What would be top 2 or 3 things?
Yeah, it's just important to remind young people that we need them. They have something, they have a skill, they have a talent, they have an ability, an idea. I really do believe all young people have a purpose, and we just need to remind them that they have a purpose and we need them. We need them to contribute. We need them to figure out how it is they want to leave their mark. We have a lot of serious problems in the world today, and it's not all on their shoulders, not all on any one person's shoulders anyway. But I do think each individual has something they can contribute. And so I hope that young people can think about that. What do they want to do? And how do they want to use their skills? And what difference do they want to make? And I think that, adults working with young people too, to think about young people, their resources to be developed. That's our responsibility to help them, remind them that they are important and they do have a purpose, and we need to help support them in their pursuit of it.
Absolutely. What was the thing in your research? I imagine, some young people are really into it and other people are just not. Where do you see this research going and being included in education space, and where do you see the future of education moving?
Yeah. Well, like you said, some people are really into it and some people are not. And when I find young people who don't have a purpose in life and who aren't interested in searching for it, I always like to add yet to the end of that sentence, because we find our purposes at different times. And it's not necessarily a race. For many adults, it's not until later life that they really identify and begin to pursue their purpose in life. So I've yet to meet a young person who is like, I have no interest in thinking about what do I want to accomplish in my life. I mean, that's what we ask in these interviews. What matters to you? What do you care about? What do you want to accomplish? How do you want to leave your mark? For most young people, they're pretty interested in that. They may not have figured it out yet, but they're pretty interested in talking about it and thinking about it. And the truth is, we don't have many opportunities. There are not many places where we are asking these things of young people. So when we come in with our interviews, we tend to have really positive responses where young people say, wow, that was actually really neat for me to do. I didn't realize I had all of these ideas in me, but yeah, I do think about this, at least on some level. The world doesn't ask me about it. You want to think about what you want to accomplish in your life. And I think that the purpose of education is to help young people identify their purpose in life and then help equip them with the skills that they need to go out and pursue it. There might be anxiety around not knowing the answer yet. And that, I think, is a fair point. And that's why we're doing this project on searching. I hate the idea that asking young people these questions might make them feel anxious because they don't know the answer yet. But I've yet to meet a young person who's seriously disinterested in the conversation. I think it's just a part of being human that we have this need to have a purpose, to have something larger than ourselves to contribute to.
I'm in it to change the system. I feel like the education system, it doesn't do like exactly what you talked about, where like we treat young people like as if they have something to contribute. It's all just, let me pour into this empty vessel. And it's like, no, that's an old model. It doesn't really apply in this case anymore.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you. I'm always grateful for opportunities to share what we're learning with people who can actually use it, put it into practice.
Thank you.
I hope it goes really well.
Take care.
You too. Bye.